Wonderful. So really hello and big welcome to everyone joining us here in the studio, as it were. And welcome also to everyone listening in on the replay. My name is Einav Avni. I'm an empowerment coach and energy healer, and I'm really interested in helping people heal naturally from chronic pain, chronic illnesses, and unexplained medical conditions. So in my group, Facebook group, Heal Yourself Naturally, I did a poll to ask, what would people want to learn more about that would make more sense to their own healing journey, and nutrition came up top. And so I go in touch with Lori, and she will introduce herself in a minute. And Lori is wonderful, and she knows a lot about a lot of things. So I'm very excited to have her on this wonderful expert talk, Nutrition for Wellness. So Lori, hello, take it away.
Hello. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, I'm so happy to be here. As you know, my name is Lori. I'm originally from Canada, but currently living in Lithuania. I've been living abroad for the last 18 years, and it's been an interesting journey. It's taken me on my healing journey and brought really nutrition to the forefront. Now, you might be seeing this red around my mouth. I'll address that in a minute. We'll get there right away, which is part of the healing journey that I'm on also still now. We're always healing, right? And there's never an end to it, really. So yes, I started studying nutrition specifically for my own healing journey, and I got into traditional Chinese medicine. I was living in China at the time, and it was really a game changer when we start to look at food from specifically from the traditional Chinese medicine perspective. We can look at food from a yin and yang opportunity, and the energy of foods and what they carry and how they are basically giving us energy and giving us that life force, or potentially extracting or taking away from that. So I'm here today. I'm going to talk about sugar specifically. If you have questions, I think we'll have a Q&A at the end, so you can maybe just write them down and let me know, and we can get to that. Absolutely. So that's a little bit about me. It's okay if I keep going, or you have another question for me?
No, okay. Please go for it. Yes.
Okay. So yes, I'll address this this redness on my face that you can see. So I guess where I can go back to is 2 months ago, I was doing some travel, and there was a lot of travel stress that time. And my diet wasn't very good, and neither was my hydration. My stress level was high. And then I was actually going back home to Canada, and I got back into old habits. When I got there, I started eating sugars, and I started eating stuff that was not normally in my diet. And sugar, I mean, there was stuff like baked goods and things like this that my mom had made. Again, I don't usually eat those kinds of things. I make my own stuff, and I do it in different way, which I'll get to in this interview as well. But I was eating a lot of like processed junk foods that are coming from the stores. And it's like, I know it was bad, but like, oh, I didn't taste this for so long. And then slowly this infection started around my face. And at the time, I didn't quite equate it to the sugar exactly. Of course, there's many factors that go on in our body when we have things show up. And at the time I had to go about, I go about healing in a very natural way. But at the time, it came very abruptly and very seriously on my face. My lips were swollen. Everything was quite intense. So I had to go to the emergency there, and I had to take antibiotics to deal with it. Not my usually first line of approach, but at that time and space, I had to do that. It did help with the infection. And I also went in a natural route and took tincture and went with, also contacted my nutrition teacher, and I did some nutrition tweaks as well. And it basically mitigated the symptoms, and I managed it. And then 2 months later, it started to come back. And I was like, what's going on? And it's not that I necessarily went back to eating this sugar-filled junk foods, but I wasn't really healed because I hadn't taken the proper healing approach from the beginning. Only the antibiotics was what I had done. It didn't really solve the root problem. So now the cause is still there. So at this point in my healing journey, as it came back, I said, I'm absolutely not going to be taking antibiotics this time. I have to heal this really to get to the root cause. So now I'm really working even on a stronger protocol through nutrition and really using food as my medicine. now that I'm back in my own home, in my own kitchen, it's much easier to do. As you know, when you're traveling, everything is kind of out of routine, out of shape. It's harder to manage ourselves. So that's what's going on here. It's getting better. And I even had, to be honest with you, contemplated not doing this talk because I was concerned about how does that look when a person who's speaking about healing and doing things, and they're physically, you can see something manifesting on them, right? And we had a little conversation about that, and we decided, no, we're going to go ahead because yes, I am only human, and I'm on my healing journey, as we all are throughout this life. We all have ups and downs, and that's part of it. And I wanted to show the realness of it to you. And yes, so sugar is here on the forefront of the topic today. Yes.
Thank you. And I actually really appreciate you being here and being vulnerable with this, because like we spoke, really, it's very easy for us to really have this only one face that we show the people, and maybe even, hold back and think, oh, I can't show when I'm struggling. I can't show when real life stuff comes up. So I really appreciate you for being here today, and for really showing all of us that it's okay. We are all human at the end of the day.
Yes, yes. And I think every time we have like another healing space that comes up, it's like another layer of cleansing, another layer of learning for us, right? Where we can tap into that deeper space of wisdom. So yeah, it's challenging, but that's, that's how it goes. So yeah, that's what's happening here. And yeah. So to talk about sugars, first I want to speak about, like, why would we want to think about removing them? At the very first thing is, like, there's no nutritional value. If we think about white, like a table sugar, the white sugar that we're eating is common on, in pastries and desserts, things when we're making stuff, it's common. It has no nutritional value for our body. So that's number one. If we're thinking of a nutritional level, it's not serving us, okay? Another one is it feeds infection. Specifically, or not even specifically, basically any type of disease or infection in our body, we're basically like fueling that when we're putting sugar in. We just continue to do that. And I knew that, like I say, already, this is knowledge that I knew, but I was not being strict when I was in Canada at home. Even once I started having the infection coming up in my face, I knew I had to cut it out completely. And I did. And when it got better, I was like, oh, I just want to have, some of my mom's baked goods or some of these goodies again. Even just one little piece. I noticed again, it started, it would like trigger. I was like, I need to be more strict in this case. So it's really important if you are dealing with pretty much any health issue, because it can contribute to inflammation in our joints. It's inflammation in our gut. It basically across the board, if you're dealing with health issues, we need to start thinking about sugar, removing that. It needs to go. And that can be challenging because sugar is addictive. It's really addictive. And I admit I'm a recovering sugar addict. Having grown up in the house that I did and having a grandma next door, she had all kinds of goodies for us. And I ate lots and lots and lots of sugar as a child and had poor health as a child as well. So it's something that we often overlook, and we don't think about sugar really as an addiction, and people having to struggle with it. So it's challenging when we just say, just remove sugar. It's not that easy because we crave it. We want it. We want more of it, right? So for example, in your coffee or your tea, if you're having sugar in there, like maybe a spoon, or can you think about having, if you have a spoonful of sugar, can you have half? Just going less, right? Like just taking that step-by-step approach, changing your taste palette basically. And that's that step-by-step approach. Once you get down to half a teaspoon, then you get down to a quarter, and then eventually removing it completely. That's where we work with it. Sugar is often a filler in terms of, like I say, that addiction. We're craving something. We use it to fill a space. Usually it has an emotional component that we're trying to fill behind it. So with many things in our life, or maybe I could say all things, there's always that energetic component to it, right? So it's not only that sugar is bad, but what are we trying to fill with that sweetness, right? I know for myself, being vulnerable, it was trying to fill a hole. Like you're trying to fill something. I want more. I want to fill that. It's an emotional thing, emotional eating when I'm not feeling completely satisfied or connected in a situation, it was like a filler. I have to do something else, put something in my mouth. Like I say, usually we're going to sugar. So again, when we're thinking about removing that sugar out of our space and removing that out of our life, we want to think of the emotional component or the energetic component. And that can be tricky when we're just coming into a space and you think, I have no idea. What do I do? Where am I going with this? What do you mean? What are you even talking about? So that's where there is support that's available for you. You can reach out to myself or other healers, that we can look at those deeper underlying issues of why you might be wanting to feel it. And like I say, it can be habit. It can be, you've had it your whole life. So it's like I say, that addiction, that craving is there. So it's really significant that we start to change our perception and start to change the way we look at food and the way that we do things. It's not only, like I say, changing things and being strict and disciplined, just saying, no, I don't need this. Or, I mean, it's good when we have the wisdom and the knowledge, we can say, oh, I have an infection. This is absolutely not serving me. Get this out. Or I have cancer. Absolutely. If something like this is in your space, sugar is a number one factor that contributes to feeding this. It must go. But how you go about it is important. And that's the whole part of the healing aspect. That's the holistic, natural approach to healing that we go for.
So can I
Yeah.
just,
Yes.
because you said at the beginning, if you have inflammation, then, maybe, and if you have any health challenge, then yes, sugar is probably the first thing that you wanna look at. I guess that's an interesting thing because of two things. I guess, first of all, there is a lot of confusion, like you said, in the diagnosis and knowing where to go and what to do. So also sometimes we just know that we're not feeling very well and we don't have a diagnosis. But basically what I'm hearing you say is that whenever if you're starting to notice that you're not feeling well, then maybe the first thing you go to thing to remove first is sugar, and maybe not remove completely even, but at least start to cut down.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's really interesting. Good point, because often in Western medicine, the Western mindset, we're looking at, like, we want the diagnosis. We want to know, what is it? And that's this situation on my face. I just still don't know exactly what it is. When I was in Canada at the time, doctors were saying it was a staph infection, which is a different type of many different types of bacteria that can be on us, right? Or it's actually naturally on our skin surface, but usually our body is immunocompromised. So that's when it starts. And it's like, I don't fit any of those things for me to have that kind of infection come in place. So it was always kind of this question mark. And everybody I kept seeing in Canada, because I had, at that point, it was really intense. And they're like, oh my God, what's wrong? What is it? What is it? What is it? It's like, I don't actually know. All I really know is I need to heal this. And these are the steps that I'm taking to heal it. So that's where it's like, we get really hung up sometimes on the exact diagnosis, when it's not a bad thing to look for a diagnosis necessarily, but we can take steps before that diagnosis comes in, or maybe there'll never be an exact diagnosis, but the steps are exactly removing that sugar to help alleviate the cause of the symptoms, right? We want to get away from that. Yeah, so that's a really good question. And now, many people can be like, I don't eat that much sugar. And actually, that's something that my parents both say when I go to their house and I think, oh, the amount I see there, right? Because they're not necessarily a teaspoon of sugar in their coffee anymore like they used to, or these kinds of things. But the sweets, the homemade baked goods are there. The candies, there's a bowl full of candies on the table. You feel like taking a candy, maybe a little tiny chocolate bar even. You nibble on this, one or two a day here, one there. Exactly. Maybe there is half a teaspoon in your cup of tea. How many cups of tea do you have in a day? When it all adds up. Gum, soft drinks, for example, another one, alcohol, also sugar related, any desserts, ice cream, these all are different things that are going to have sugars in them. And those are pretty like common ones that we can see. But I really strongly also suggest to start reading the ingredient list of, if you're buying prepackaged foods, take a look at the ingredient list, because hidden sugars it's unbelievable how many hidden sugars are in packaged foods that we buy. And some of those can be like high fructose corn syrup, many different syrups in there, all kinds of different, yeah, it's just read ingredient lists. And especially if you're buying something and sugar is the third thing, within the third thing on the ingredient list, put it back on the shelf. It's too high. It's too high on the ingredient list. Just put it back on the shelf. And it can be, like I say, it takes time. It's challenging to get into the mindset shift, to get into the pattern of even reading the ingredients, because we've always bought these things. We've always consumed these things. And when you start to, pick this up off the shelf and you're looking at the ingredients like, oh, poof. For example, Nutella as well, these kinds of things, they can be really tasty, but we can learn to make our own as well. And then we can limit how much sugar we're putting in, but also we can have sugar alternatives, so more healthier ones. For example, some that I like to incorporate in my baking or in my cooking, maple syrup is one. Yes, I'm from Canada, so that's a natural one for me to go to, but it's a better one for our body. Again, within reason, right? We want to think about it. Like, it's not just like, oh, Lori said I can have this. You're not just putting maple syrup on everything, right? Another good one, or a good one, a healthier alternative, I may say, it can be date syrup as well, or even whole dates. We can add those, if, for example, if you're making a homemade nut milk, you can add a date or two in there, a little bit sweeter. It helps. Coconut sugar is another one. It helps. It's not as, it doesn't spike our blood sugar level as much. It's better. Another thing that is a nice alternative, or a nice way to get that sweet taste, is fruit. We often overlook this as well. We think, oh, I want this cookies, or I want this. That's that, like, really, you're really craving that sugar, that artificial sweetness, But think about having a piece of fruit in the afternoon is a really good time, actually. And I would suggest one piece of fruit per day. I had suggested fruit to actually a good friend of mine. And then the next time I talked to her, she was having like 5 pieces a day. I'm like, that might be a bit much. Let's tone it down, right? Like, so it's, again, we want to think about moderation and balance. So if you can, having a seasonal fruit is best. Now, it's not always possible when we're living in climates that are colder. We don't necessarily have things that are always growing around us. But we can do different things like apples. And I mean, eating an apple every day can be a little bit boring after a while, but making applesauce, making your own applesauce, steaming apples, don't need to add any sweetener to it. Just steam the apples and blend them up. Add some cinnamon, ginger. You can even add some turmeric in there a little bit, something like this, some vanilla or something. It tastes so wonderful. Again, it's just like training our taste buds as well to kind of get used to the natural sweetness that are in foods like that. And when you have that, your body starts to be like, oh, okay, now I got what I need. I'm looking for that, because we do need sweet stuff in our life as well. Yes, what else did I have in here? Applesauce, soft drinks. If you are drinking soft drinks regularly, soda, pop drinks, whatever you call them, carbonated beverages, Coca-Cola, any of these Fantas, these sweetened drinks, do your best, I suggest, to move towards soda water. Just plain soda water. And again, there is, if you have like the Soda Stream or something like this, you can have like the syrups that go in them. I don't really recommend going that way, but if you are really struggling, again, that can be like a kind of weaning off of the Coca-Cola, for example. You start to add a little bit of the syrup, and you can monitor yourself for how much you're adding, and eventually remove it completely. You can just have the soda water and feel like, oh, this is really good. I still want the carbonated beverage. I still want something different than just table water. It can be an option. And it's a much healthier one than that one that's filled with sugar that just doesn't serve us. And one thing I want to say before I know that we're going to open up for questions and anything else right away is, if, oh my gosh, it just slipped my mind. Sugars, soda water. Oh, it just slipped. How did it go? Okay. We'll move past. It'll come back.
It'll come back.
I had it. It'll come back. If not, to be said. Unbelievable how it goes. It was slippery. Okay, we'll put it out there. If it comes back, it was meant to be said then. So, okay.
I just wanted to say, I was reading this article some time ago, a long time ago, about this woman that said, okay, she's going to try to go off sugar for 1 month and see how it went. And she was really looking at energy levels and sleeping, how it will impact her sleeping. And one thing that actually stuck in my mind was her discovery that actually sugar is not just the sweet things that we think about, but it can be also in cereals and in, you know, tomato sauce and stuff like that. And like you say, to read the labels really opened her eyes to how much hidden sugar there is. I say hidden, it's there, but we don't, it's there on the label maybe, but we don't realize. And yeah, that was her surprise, definitely stuck in my mind.
Absolutely. Yes. Good point. Absolutely. It's when we start to become more aware, it's like, whoa, this is everywhere. And this is what I was going to say. That's why it's so slippery, because it's so important. This continuous input of sugar from basically the stuff that's in the supermarket shelves is keeping us sick. This is keeping us sick. This is contributing, like I said before, to infection, to the disease in our body, to weight problems as well, weight management, all of it. This is headache, all of it. It continues a cycle of keeping us sick and unwell, and it's addicting. So we keep wanting more of it because we feel good. We think we feel good when we're eating it. That's that, you know, kind of tricky thing. And we contribute, or we continue to contribute to being sick, and we stay in that medical system of needing the doctors to continue to support us. What's wrong? What's the diagnosis? What's going on in my body? I have never had a Western medical doctor speak to me about nutrition and ask me what are my sugar levels. Never, ever, ever. And that's a huge problem in society today. So that's why when we start to take our power back, when we start to learn simple things, that what we can do, what we're putting in our mouth is contributing to our health, or the opposite, or our illnesses, we can start to become better from the ground up, from that foundational space.
I think it's so important what you're saying. It's really bringing the sugar and its disadvantages to the forefront of our minds. And I mean, for me, yes. Yes, sugar is definitely an unwanted guest in my house, and it's constantly here. And when I say to my kids, you know, let's start talking about reducing sugars, then I basically already know, you know, I don't know what they're going to eat basically if there's no sugar. It's like it's really out of hand. So yes, I'm very excited about this conversation because it's definitely, I have lots of things to learn here.
We all do. And it's really, like I said before, it's a step-by-step approach. And I've had worked with other mothers before, and they said as well, like, my kids won't eat pasta, the pasta sauce, unless it's the one with sugar in the ingredients. And I think, oh my gosh, okay. First things first. You're the mother. You're the one cooking the food. If your child absolutely refuses to eat, maybe they're going to go to a bed with a hungry tummy that night. Pretty sure the next day they can wake up and they're going to be hungry and they're going to eat the food that you give them, right? I'm not saying we need to force our kids or to starve our kids like this, but it's important when we know why, we start the dialogue process as well. And it can be like, it's tricky and challenging as well, because I understand kids could be like, what do you mean I'm not sick? Or, you know, I'm fine. And that's for all of us. When we're feeling good, we don't necessarily think about having to take these things out. It's usually when we're in some kind of health crisis that we really think, oh, now I need to deal with it. That's normal. But really starting with dialogue and small steps. And my suggestion to this mother was, can you use the sugar pasta sauce and half with a regular pasta sauce that doesn't have sugar, and start that way? Like I say, same with like limiting that teaspoon of sugar in your coffee or your tea, for example. You know, start eliminating it. And dialogue. That's the best way. We need to start communicating about what is going on here. And again, when we start to get into it, there's lots of things that we can create in our own kitchens, for example, that don't have so much sugar. It's usually the stuff that comes out of the supermarket shelves. And that's the challenge in today's world with busy working moms, busy families, both parents working. You know, it's easy, buy the food, here you go, eat this and warm it up. yeah, it takes time, like I say, the mindset shift and putting that little bit of extra time and effort into how we can make some things in our own space that will be better for ourselves and for our family.
Yeah. I guess the first step is taking the first step. So that's already a good place to be.
Good.
So I guess let's open the floor to questions and let's see what is on people's minds.
Anything come up for anyone today, or any questions, recipes, substitutes, no, let's see what we can do.
All right, I'll kick off with something that isn't so much a sort of a question, but an experience, if I may just relate. For this going into lockdown, that would have been the first part of 2020, going off and off our short now of 4 years. I did a program with a guy called Eric Edmead, which some of you may know, some of you may not know. And it was a 3-month program where we gradually cut out different foods. And he went with the ultimate way of going into keto. I didn't take the whole thing that far, and I find it a bit of a struggle. But I learned a lot about what you have been talking about, around particularly the sugars, particularly the processed, the ready-made, the off-the-shelf stuff. And he got us to sort of look at the labels. You can even get an app that you can put you just tap your barcode on the packet against it, and it'll tell you what's in there and so forth. And I was amazed. There was over 60 different names for sugars of different sorts of which corn syrup and all the rest of it. And so when we think of sugars as being, that thing that's in the bowl on the table, or we put something into our coffee or whatever, that's only the tip of the iceberg. And I was absolutely amazed about, what was in sugar. And then there's all sorts of other things about the food industry and what they may or may not be up to and the ulterior motives around that. And then the sort of the health industry of going back to and throwing and all the rest of it. But it really was an eye-opener for me. But getting rid of the sort of processed food, the refined stuff, which is where I made a start. And I still cut out. I don't have sugar in my coffee. I don't drink tea very much. I don't have carbonated anything at all. I just find them too sweet. And the other thing I find after cutting out some of this stuff, when you go back to it, I find that the sweetness is quite intense. And likewise, when you cut out some of this stuff, you're also cutting out the salt. Well, a certain amount of salt is being cut out as well. So when I don't eat, I've cut off butter for 3 years. So when I do have some of that or something like mayonnaise, you're thinking, oh God, this is very salty. Because you're used to not having it. A lot of this is what we're used to as well. And it's a sort of habit forming thing to cut things out. Decades ago, I cut out sugar in my coffee, stuff like that. But a lot of it is, and I got out of this 3 months, was, you've got to do this thing gradually. And that way you can begin to build up to things. You don't begin, you're cutting down little by little so that your body gets used to it, acclimatizes to it. So that's sort of my sort of input here, is that whilst I didn't go the whole hog and I didn't want to do that, I've cut out a lot of stuff. I've cut out a lot of the sort of what these days in this country we would call the ultra processed stuff that's high in all of this stuff. And when you look at some of this stuff, and it's fresh or allegedly fresh, but it has a date on it of a week hence. But what is in there to keep it going that long? Because that food ordinarily wouldn't last that long. So that's also a bit of an eye-opener for me as well. That that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what goes in food, definitely. Another topic for a whole new section for sure. But I think it's also a really good point about what you say about the different hidden names for sugar. It's definitely there as well. Lori, do you want to say anything? Or I see that Simone has raised her hand. So
just quickly, yeah, that was really great. Thank you for that. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. And actually, that's really amazing you mentioned it, because that's leading into next week's talk. We're going to work on processed foods and how to replace that as well. And like you say, that step by step, right? Like it's, some people can do like a cold turkey approach, everything out. If that works for you, that's fine. But it's a challenge for a lot of people. So that's step by step. And we start to make those changes slowly. Yes, this is what I'm doing. Why are we doing it? Why do I want this? Why do I want this? Right. And we slowly make those changes. And then it becomes the lifestyle habit that we have now created. It's not, because many people also get afraid when we think I have to cut things out and what am I can't have, they go into this almost like a sense of lack. And that's what we want to avoid, because that only makes us potentially feel worse or more stressed. Right. So it's important that we think about also like, what are we replacing, or how are we still managing ourselves, right? So it's not just like, oh, I can't eat anything kind of concept, right? To yes, there's lots of foods you can have actually that are really healthy for you. Thank you.
Yeah. Simone, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was 10 minutes late because I was a little bit confused about the link. Thank you for the information shared with us. Yeah, I looked through my paper because I wrote down some words. What I think is quite important is how to address this topic to people, because it is really hard to my feeling, and this is my own perception. It is really hard when you tell people you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Okay, so I really like the other way around, like you just mentioned, Lori. So the managing topic, the replacement topic, and I really like the approach of telling people we all need the sugar, especially for being able to function, as well as fats, for instance. And instead of starting telling people what not to eat with this sugar, you're totally right in your whole explanation. Then you start with telling people what they need. You see what I mean? So everyone needs this sugar, but if instead of starting the session with people to tell them you cannot eat, this is not good, this is not good, this is not good, yeah, you just forget this and you start telling people you should be this, try that, and then explain what it does to your body and your mechanism, and they will start functioning otherwise. And at the same time, they will not be so hungry for the other ones. And then you can introduce the philosophy of leaving out all these sugars, because I studied Ayurveda. So this is a very broad spectrum. So this is why it's totally me as well, because if not, I would not have been studying it. But it teaches also the people to learn how to take care for oneself. But if you tell people not to do this, not to do that, then there is, as per instant, a resistance. And it goes immediately to the brain, and we should go to the heart. So I really like, and maybe this is in one of your other sessions, the managing part, managing ourselves, because we need this, and because we are raised like that to take this, that, and it is all there. So we take it, and it is but it has a lot of disadvantages, but we don't know it. But if you start adding the other ones, then it's much more easy to leave out the others. Well, this is what comes up to my mind because it is very, very true what you tell. All these hidden sugars. It's amazing. It's actually, I am quite amazed that we human beings are still standing up. Actually, we must be a very, very strong a specimen. I mean, really, if you see what we do and what we take in our body, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And still we stand, and still we think, and still we manage to learn and to do things. It's really crazy. So imagine if we don't do this and do what you advise to do us to do, then what could we do more, even more than?
And
Yes.
I think I want to add, Simone, that actually what you say is a, is the answer for life, really, because as soon that this is really why we have resistance for change, right? Because as soon as we say we take it out, we want it more. But if we introduce the benefit, this is really advice for life. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing. Very, very, very powerful. One thing I wanted to say is, like you mentioned, because I said, like at the beginning, I said sugar has nutritional value, and then you had mentioned about that we need sugar, or that the sugar. So there's a little bit. I just wanted to clarify that. Yes, our body, the energy is breaking down inside the carbohydrates that we eat. That's what we want. The proper real carbohydrates that break it down into sugar that our body gets energy from. So just in case anybody was listening and felt a little bit like, what's going on? She said yes, and I'm shaking her head. She's shaking her head yes, and we're talking yes about sugar, no about sugar. What? So there was the clarification. We want to remove the processed sugar. The white sugars, these things we want to get rid of, and eat the real carbohydrates that will give us the energy we need. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
for anybody
thank you for this clarification. Yeah, thank you. You're very true. That's also what I meant. Yes, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. This is really fascinating. Definitely, eye-opening, and I really like that he's coming back, to the forefront of the conversation. Like I say, I've been thinking about it myself a lot, and just thinking, what can I do? I mean, my daughters are fussy enough to not even like pasta with sauce, but but there are other things that yes, definitely make me worry. Let me see if there's any other questions, or otherwise we'll let Lori bring it back to the the conclusion, basically. Yeah. Hi, Siga.
Hi. I have a question. I like to bake, and I like to use my mom's recipes that include white sugar. How do I put like you talked about coconut syrup or date syrup or something like that? How do I know how much of the syrup goes instead?
Yeah, that can be tricky with a lot of traditional recipes. The white sugar might help with, the way things, the texture, different things like that can change. And that's, like I say, tricky, especially if we're looking at like traditional recipes that might have required a lot of white sugar. I honestly don't know a lot of like the exact ratios. And I would say my best friend has been Google search and Google, like just equivalent, it's like, and look for replacements. How can I replace this? For example, 2 cups of white sugar, what's the best replacement in this kind of recipe? Usually you can find a lot of different answers on the internet. That's my best, been my best friend through a lot of changes that I've done in my kitchen as well. It's just, what's a healthy equivalent? What can I substitute? Sometimes, for example, applesauce can be used in baking as opposed to oils and sugars. These kinds of things we can start to change. And yes, maybe the end result won't be exactly as the traditional recipe that we started with, or the taste. But again, that's changing our mindset, changing the taste palette. This is also good. It just isn't, what my grandma used to make exactly. But good question.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions for anyone?
Can I just reiterate that point that Simone made, and you actually, Aina, sort of reiterated it, is knowing why we want to do something here in changing habit. I'm a professional coach, and I work with people around a lot of it around change in all aspects of their life and so forth. But it's when we realize, or when we know why we are doing something, not the how or the what on the how, but what's the real reason and the benefits of that. Maybe it's because we're overweight, but maybe it's because we're overweight, but also we are parents, therefore we have to look after our children. So what's the ultimate why here? And that can be a very powerful motivator for us around any aspect of change. It's almost like the greater good. And this is how we're going to achieve it, or one of the contributors to that will be to cut out sugar, quote unquote. But what is it? It's not just to cut out the sugar, which is having the negative impact in the first place, and making us feel a bit sluggish and all the rest of it. But what are the benefits of that? Why am I doing this in the first place? And the greater benefit, the knock-on effects of that. And once we begin to know that, that can be an even more powerful motivator for us, rather than saying, oh, I've got to lose, I don't know, so many kilos, or I've got to cut down so much sugar over a week or a month because my doctor says I should. Yeah, so when we get a better grip of that, why we're really doing this, and then reinforcing that perhaps with images of what we want to achieve, then that is a great influence on our unconscious, which is something that will then help us to move forward.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Yes, thank you so much.
Great. Lori, any concluding words before we stop the recording and all of that?
If you are struggling with taking sugar out, if you're struggling with exactly potential recipe ideas, or what can I do, how can I manage this, definitely reach out. I'm here to help, I'm here to support. I also have a Facebook page, a YouTube channel. I have different nutritional videos that I've already done. I can work one-on-one as well if that's something that interests you, to move forward with helping this. And like you say, what's the why? Where do you want to go? And we can do it. We can get there. It's possible. It's definitely possible. And again, just that self-love, loving yourself, that's got to be first and foremost. And a lot of us, myself included, still something I'm working on more and more all the time, right? It's a big piece of really and truly stepping into making these changes that are going to be beneficial for ourselves and our loved ones around us as well.
Yes, brilliant. So just to mention, of course, wherever the chat will be found, the video, we will put all of your links and everything, so people can follow you and find everything that you share. So Lori and everyone that came here to the live, and everyone that is watching the replay, thank you so much for being here. For anyone watching the replay, if you have any questions or any comments or anything that you'd like to let us know, please do. And I actually really want to know what surprised you. What did you find really useful, or what got you started, to have a new kind of thoughts about moving forward. So thank you again so much. Thank you.